Hello everyone. So in our previous video we learned different tokens related to Python. For example, we discussed what is an identifier, we discussed what is a literal. So let us write some code which will help us to understand literals in a better way. Now for writing code, I'll be using Jupyter notebooks. The reason for using Jupyter notebook is Uh, the very first thing is that Jupyter Notebook comprises of a phenomena which says all in one place. What does this mean? Jupyter Notebook is a web-based interactive tool which helps or interactive environment which comes up with lot many features to handle text, support images, and then it comprises of all the necessary required libraries which we can use to enable the context of batteries included in Python. Apart from that, it is easy to share. Any notebook which you create in Jupyter, yes, of course, it contains Python code. Uh, it can be shared because it follows a structured format which is in JSON, and JSON is the standard format in web which is used for sharing or for communicating content. Apart from that, if I'm using Jupyter Notebook, it comes with number of tools like NB Convert, which helps it to convert into any available format. For example, I want to convert a notebook into PDF or into HTML, it is possible. Then Jupyter also allows you to use Jupyter Cloud, which enables to collaborate with the code amongst multiple users. So it has number of advantages, and we'll be using Jupyter Notebook to write our code in Python. Now, how we will use that? Now, in case if you are using something in Jupyter, you first have to create a folder in any of the available drives or folders you have. For example, I'll be using some of the folders which I already had created in desktop. So when I'll click on this, it will show me a list of folders. Now let's say I want to work in a specific one. For example, I want to work in this folder. I'll click on this. Now I want to create some notebooks. To create a notebook, you have to select new option, and from within this option you will be using Python 3 IPY kernels. So when I'm using Python or when I want to design a code in Jupyter Notebook using the tools which Jupyter Notebook provides, I'll be using this environment. Now, when I'll use the code or when I'll write the code, the Jupyter file is saved in a format or with an extension which is IPYNB, which stands for Python Notebook. Now, when I want to write some code, these are the cells which are being given to us. Now, let me show you one by one as we will be writing the code, the way these tools or these things can be used. So let's say I'll write a small piece of code to print some content. So I'll be writing print, let's say hello. Now, if you already had learned languages like C or C++ or Java, what they say, you have to include or you have to import necessary header files or necessary packages in order to handle different tasks. For example, if I'm working in C, let alone I want to print something, I have to include stdio.h, I have to write main, then only I can display something. Unlike Python, where we need not have to include the files with the standard libraries which are already embedded within the machine. So when I'll be running any code, I simply had to write the code until and unless it is a very specific file meant to perform a specific task. For example, let's say I want to display graphs, then I'll be using certain modules or libraries which are customized. So standard libraries you need not have to include, and this is what batteries included approach means. So if I'll write print hello and then I'll execute the code using run command, this will be displayed directly. So this is how code in Python can be written, and in Jupyter Notebook it can be written. These are the cells in which you will write the code. Now let's say I want to assign a literal. Now literals can be assigned to variables, or uh, if I am working with literals, I have to store them somewhere to use them. But in Python, you can use them directly. For example, these are the literals. 10, if I'll write this and I'll run, it will display 10. If I'll write 10 plus 2 and I'll run, it will display 12. So in Python, literals can be used directly, or we can assign these literal values to variables also. For example, let's say if I'll write n equals to 12, this will assign a literal value 12 to n. This 12 is an integer value. So when I'll write print n, the value of n will be printed. Let me execute this. Now, when I executed this code here, the value of n will also be visible in the next cell. Now, when I am using n equals to 12, this assigns a type to my variable n. This type is dynamically associated with n when a value is assigned to it. So how we will see which type or which data type has been assigned to my variable n? When I'll write print, within print I can write type. Type is an inbuilt method which tells the data type to which a given variable belongs. So I will be writing this type method inside print method. So when I'll run this, it says class int. So this variable n is being assigned a data type which is int, and this data type is a is an inbuilt class in Python. So what do you mean by class? Python is object oriented in nature. So every variable which you will declare or which you will define by assigning some value to it, it will be given a class based on the value. So I assigned a literal which is of integer type to n. So this n becomes an object of class int. Similarly, if I write a equals to 2.5 or 2.4, this 2.4 is a float value. So if I'll write print type a, and then I'll display this or I'll execute this code, it says class float. That means if I'll assign a floating value to any variable, the data type will be of class float type. So every variable which you declare in Python will be given a data type based on the value which you had assigned to it, and it will become a class object of that specific type. So I had given a equals to 2.5, so the class for this object is float, and when I'll display this code, it will display, or when I'll print the type of this object A, it will say class float. Similarly, if I'll write A equals to, or I'll write B equals to 2 plus ij. This 2 plus, sorry, if I'll write 2 plus 3j. This 2 plus 3j is actually a complex notation or a complex number. I hope you have an idea about what complex number are, or otherwise we will be discussing these data types in our later classes. So if I'll write b equals to 2 plus 3j, and then if I'll write print type b over here, if I'll run this code, it says class complex. So if a value of this type, which is a complex value, which is a complex number, which comprises of two parts, real and imaginary, if I'll assign this value to any of the variable, then it will become an object of class complex. Similarly, if I'll write s equals to hello, now hello is a string. So if I'll write print type s and then I'll execute the code, it will become a class of string type. So this is how we will assign literal values to our variable. This is called dynamic typing, which means whichever value or whichever type of value I'll assign to my variable, it will become an object of that specific class. Now, why we use type method? We use type method to display the data type to which a given object belongs. And this becomes an object of that specific class type. Now, if I want to, let's say, save my file because I am writing some code, later on I want to use them, I'll click on this untitled one and I'll write the name of my file. For example, let's say I want to save this file with the name lab1. I'll rename it and then I'll close it. So when I'll save this, let me save this file again. Okay, this file already exists, so that is why it has been given an error. I'll write it as lab2. So this is how this name has been assigned to my file. So I'll save my file and next time when I'll write some code, it will automatically be saved in my program. Now, this is how we will assign literals to our variables. Now, if I'm working with Python, because it has different, different type of data types, and it gives you a number of methods to handle these data types, we'll see how we can work on that. Now, before starting with any of the data type, let us first see how when we are working with an integer value, what all things we can perform, how we can use different type of print methods, what are comments, and how we will assign strings in the form of literals to a variable, or how we can display different formats in a string. So if I'm working with Python, let's say I simply write a code a equals to, or I'll write this, x equals to 10, y equals to 2, and then I'll write x, print x, then I'll write print y, and then I'll write print x plus y. When I'll run this code, it will write 10 for x, 2 for y, and 12 for x plus y. Now I want to display all these values in one single line. I want to display values by separating them with a comma. I can do all that using my print command. How I can use that? I'll simply write print x comma y comma x plus y. If I'll write this, it will display values by separating them with spaces. Now let's say if I want to have a comma in between the value, just like I had displayed it here. So what I can do, let me insert a cell. I'll write this print x comma y comma x plus y. Then I'll write a parameter for this which says separator equals to and within double quotes, I'll write the separator name. Means I want that the value should be comma separated. So when I'll execute this code, it will separate the values in spite of spaces with comma. Similarly, let's say I want to have a value separated with some other character. I'll write separator equals to, let's say I want to have a dollar sign in between. When I'll execute this code, the values will be separated by dollar. Now, if I'll write this, the values are printed in one single line. Let's say I have multiple print statements and I want to print them in one single line. I can do this. I'll write print x, comma, and equals to. Now, end specifies how a given print statement will be truncated at the end. So, for example, I want that the end should not be a new line character, it should be space. So, I'll write end so that every line will end with space. Now, when I'll run this, my values will have spaces in between. So you can use both ways. Either you can print the values in this format or you can print the values using end parameter. So if I am working with print statement, I can use SCP. It is a separator which will be introduced between the values or between the content you want to display. The values which you display will by default have spaces if they are printed in one single print statement. If you have multi-line statements, if you want to use multiple print statements, and by default every print statement introduces a new line character. So I want to change it into spaces. I can use, or I want to change it into some other say character. I'll be using end parameter, and the value of end specifies how your print statement will display the content and will add a value at the end of the content. So it will be a new line character if we do not specify end here. And character will be added at the end of the line other in spite of slash n. So this is how we can use print statement. Now let's say I want to print a message value of x and I want to display the value of x. The value will be displayed, or we can append multiple content by comma separating the content. Again, if I'll write value of y, then I want to print the value of y. This is how I can use multiple strings and variables in one single print statement. So this is how we'll be using print statement within our code. In the next video, we will be working on how we can use different type of string formats within our code. Apart from that, we will be using different operators with our first data type, which is of integer or number format. So we'll be seeing how we can work with integer, how we can work with float, and how we can work with complex. So for now, thank you.